3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to episode 7 of Ganking Azeroth. This week, it's just me, just Wayne. Earlier today, Sean and I tried to record this episode, and we ran into some major technical difficulties, which ended up resulting in me having to reformat my entire MacBook Pro. I was running the Catalina beta, and I ended up having some major issues with GarageBand, the computer overheating and freezing while we were trying to record this week. I have no idea what changed. We've recorded the last few of our episodes on the Catalina beta with no issues. Just for some reason this week it didn't want to cooperate with us, so like I said, I ended up having to reformat the entire computer and reinstall a fresh version of macOS Mojave just to get it working. So we tried to record at about 5:30. As of this recording right now, it's 10:06 p.m. So needless to say, Sean is not here. I'm taking one for the team, and I'm going to stay up late and get this show recorded. Tentatively, Sean will be back next week to record if he gets his playtime in like he's supposed to. Otherwise, it might just be me again. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening next week. But without further ado, let's get into this week's show. What have I been doing the last 2 weeks since we didn't even... we didn't even record last week because we were both busy. The internet was out here for like 4 days a few weeks ago. Man, it's just been a mess. It's been a mess around here. So, what have we been doing for the last 2 weeks? Obviously, we didn't have a show last week, so we got 2 weeks of stuff to talk about. I know myself, I've just been grinding world quests in Najdatar, grinding world quests in Mechagon. I still don't have my flying done, unfortunately. Flying is still not completed. I've been, like I said, grinding. So I must be doing something wrong because I feel like I'm not getting as much rep as everybody else. I see a lot of people flying, and I feel like I put a lot of playtime in. Probably in a 3-day period, I probably put in a good 5 or 6 hours playtime. I feel like I should have flying, but I just don't. So I don't really try to farm the rares, and I think that's where I'm missing out, is on the rares. But I do want to say that I'm just playing to have fun. I'm not playing to try to be what everybody else is being. I just want to have fun and play the game. I want to play it. So as of right now, I'm really having a good time, and I'm not too worried about flying. Would it be nice to have flying? Oh yeah, of course it would definitely be nice to have flying, but I don't have it, so it is what it is. Thoughts on Najdatar and Mechagon? Mechagon is good the way it is. I'm really enjoying Mechagon. Najdatar would be better with flying, though. If I had flying, I would enjoy it much more. The problem I'm having now is there's just so many caves and hills and roundabouts that you have to deal with Najdatar. It just makes it uncomfortable, so to speak, maybe. Maybe that's a bad word, uncomfortable. It's more of like a inconvenience, I guess would be a better word. Inconvenience in regards to not having flying in Najdatar. So, with that, I have found out this last week that if you level one of the bodyguards, I believe, to level 30, these are the bodyguards that you can get in Najdatar from the little campfire. If you level one of those up to level 30, you get a mount. Let me rephrase that. Two of the three bodyguards, if you level them up, you'll get a mount. One of them will give you a toy, and that is Ori, O-R-I, gives you a toy. I didn't know that depending on what you got, you'd get something different. So I actually got Ori up to level 5, found this information out. Now I had to switch, and I am now on Akana so I can get the Snapdragon mount. I got Akana up to level, I believe it's level 4. So I'm making progress. It's just frustrating that, you put all that work into one character, then you find out, oh, that's not the one that I wanted to do. So, but anyways, that's where we are at with that. As far as Mechagon, like I said, I've been doing the world quests, the rares when I can. I did find that there is a spot to grind rep in Mechagon that'll help towards that flying. It's the recycling area. And if you run the appropriate quests in Mechagon, you actually just follow the quest chain, you will eventually wind up into this recycling area, and you can actually, so you'll get these quests to create a recycling center, right? And it's just a little machine that when you kill the mobs in that area, the mobs give you parts. And depending on the number of different parts you have, there's 3 different parts. You need a certain number of each one. You can combine those to make a recycled part. You then take that recycled part and you put it through the recycler, and it comes out with so-called I forget the name of it. I think it's after everything's all said and done, it's called a recycled part. Well, you can turn that in to a daily quest NPC there, and you can get rep. The good thing about it is that you can do that unlimited times and just keep going and going and going. And you get 165 rep per turn in. That actually ends up being a lot of rep. I know there's a lot of people running recycling groups in the group finder. So if you can get yourself into one of those, you can just sit there and grind and make a ton of things and get your rep done really fast. So that was a neat little find. Let's see here. Take a drink of water. The Mechagon dungeon. I feel like I'm falling behind. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to play that Mechagon dungeon. That is a goal of mine this week, to get in there and clear that mythic dungeon. So hopefully, like I said, this week I'll be able to get that done. I don't think finding a group will be too hard. It's just finding a group good enough to do it, considering that it is a mythic dungeon after all. So we will see what happens. Not this week, but last week, the weekly event was the pet battles, where the more pet battles you do, you get extra rep. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to partake in that, which is kind of upsetting because I really, really wanted to level some pets so I could do more pet battling, just kind of trying to diversify myself in this game so I have more stuff to do other than just grinding world quests for gear and such. So unfortunately, I didn't get to do any of that. However, this week was the Wrath of the Lich King time walking event. I was able to grind out my 5 dungeons earlier today, so I got all my time warped badges, and the rewards for doing the time walking this week were actually pretty good. I want to say it gave you a 415 item from Ashara's Palace or the Crucible. I think it was Ashara's Palace it gave you a piece from. Don't hold me to that. It could have been Crucible, but I think it was Ashara. Anyways, it gives you a 415, and you get some time warp badges and all that stuff. So after this week, and then you get that complete 5 time walking dungeons, get this piece of gear. Then when you finish the first one, you get the time warped prism for the Wrath of the Lich King dungeons that you have to turn in. to the NPC in Old Dalaran, and after that, you get a 500 time warp badges as a reward. So that's also very good. That brought me to, I want to say it was just over 3,500 total time warped badges, meaning that I only need another 1,500 and I can get another mount. So doing pretty good. I have two or three of the time warped mounts. So I'm really looking forward to getting this next 1,500. So I think that'll be like next. It'll probably be at least 2, maybe 3 time warped time walking events. Unfortunately, so that's probably another month or 2 away, 2 months out. We'll see what happens, but I'm close. I'm close to be able to get another mount. So that's always something cool. As far as some newer news, PvP Season 3 has begun. I kind of had a goal for myself to partake in some more PvP events. The only problem I'm having now is, I want to run arenas, but getting a good... my guild really doesn't do too much of that, at least not that I know of. I could probably ask around and find out, but if I could get into some threes, I really want to run threes and really try to push so I can get those vicious war mounts. That would be really cool to have some of those PvP mounts. I mean, I don't have any, and I just want a PvP. I don't care about the gear. I just care about the mounts and the toys and stuff you get. Call me a casual or whatever you want to call it. It's not a casual because I'm far from a casual, but that's the kind of stuff I like to get from the PvP. So plus the titles. Titles are cool too. So let's see here. The guild. This is the guild. Some rating news. This guild has a very funny name. It is Strawberry Puppy Kisses. They were world first in completing the Heroic Eternal Palace raid. So congratulations to Strawberry Puppy Kisses. Good job on that world first heroic. Kind of deep diving into a little bit more rating news here. The Mythic Race to World First started Tuesday. So today's Sunday. So it started just about 5 days ago. And as of this time right now, I do believe Method and Limit are both 7 of 8. I have not seen if any other guilds are 7 of 8. And also the last time I checked, the guild Limit had a better completion percentage than Method did. So Mythic World First race is always really fun to watch. I am an NA boy, so I am rooting for Limit. I do acknowledge that Limit does have a 16-hour head start, considering we're an NA and the reset. I think it's 16 hours. Basically a day head start. And I think this time around it's really going to make a difference because I think we're going to go all the way to the reset, and then Limit's going to be able to clear. And I think they're going to get they're going to re-clear Mythic, and then they'll get the kill because of all the gear difference. And I think the reason I think that is because that time difference. Method is going to be behind on the reset. And yeah. But again, last time the same situation happened, the Method was way behind, but they were able to re-clear faster and get back in it and take that world first. So the race is tight. The race is for sure tight. We'll just have to see what happens. And then they'll drink water here, wet the whistle here. Moving on, there is some front office news from Blizzard Entertainment. This week, hope the dogs are getting all excited. Sorry about that. Had to take a short pause because the dogs started barking. There's the neighbors are outside doing something, God knows what, at 10:30 at night on a Sunday, but they were out there messing around. So, some front office news. Blizzard has announced that Frank Pierce, who was one of the co-founders to the company back when it was known as Silicon and Synapse, has decided to retire after 28 years with the company. Pierce ended up sharing the news in a statement published on Blizzard's website. It does not suggest that he's leaving for another company. Instead, he talks about spending more time outdoors and pursuing other passions like learning to play an instrument. President J. Allen Brack also said that, didn't say, he made a statement, that Pierce parting ways with the company, in which he talks up Pierce's role, despite the fact that he hasn't been in the most public facing of roles. And that was my biggest thing about this, is I honestly never heard of the guy before. So, I mean, shame on me. And congratulations to him for 28, helping founding this ginormous company that's now publicly traded and part of a gaming conglomerate. Congratulations to him for retiring after 28 years. So yeah, bravo, Mr. Pierce. What I did find strange is that J. Allen Brack actually called him an introvert in his statement that he released. Which I thought that was strange, because I always thought the word introvert was like an insult. But I guess in the gaming community, that's something that I guess if you're a shut-in and you're an introvert, I guess you can be called that, I guess, huh? But anyways, I thought that was an insult, but apparently not, because I'm sure they're legal. Looked into it. So, moving on. This is something new that we decided we wanted to try. We wanted to start, when new raids are released, we wanted to start giving a little rundown of the bosses as they come out in respect to the LFR releases. As you know, LFR released released Tuesday, this last Tuesday, so it's been out for 5 days now. Last week we had planned on doing this, where we would give a rundown of the first 3 bosses for Wing 1, and then the show before Wing 2 opens, we would give a rundown of the next of the Wing 2 bosses, so on and so forth until we covered all the wings of the raid. So the dates for the raid is, as I said, Wing 1 opened on July 16th. Wing 2 opens July 30th. Raid Finder Wing 3 opens August 13th. And I think that's it. I don't have a Wing 4 on here, but I think it is only 3 wings. Just so everybody is aware, the minimum eye level to get into a Raid Finder event is 380, which, in my opinion, is pretty easy to get, because if you're around like the 375, 380 eye level, you're going to get some pretty good world quests that'll end up giving you some pretty nice pieces of gear. And I know the time walking dungeons, they were dropping 400 gear. So it's very easy to get to that 380 item level. Nobody should have an issue with that, as long as you play the game. You don't even have to really play the game a lot. If you just log in and do some stuff, you're gonna have the gear to do it. Like, I know Rurik, he doesn't play that much, or Sean doesn't play that much, and he's at like a 396 item level. He can jump into a normal. He's a tank, so he'd be able to get picked up into a normal. 400 is pretty much kind of like the number that you want for normals. So it's very, very easy to get over that 380 item level hump to get into the LFRs. So for you LFR heroes out there, this is the portion of the show that we are going to cover that. So normals drop 415, heroic raids drop 430 level gear, and mythics drop 445 level gear. And if you are lucky enough to get something that forges, obviously your gear is going to even be higher than that. So this total raid is an 8-boss raid tier. Like I said, it opened up on July 16th for LFR. This week we will be talking about the first 3 bosses. So when you first enter the raid, you are going to want to stay right in the middle and travel down the middle of the room. You don't want to go to the sides and pull all the trash over there. Just stay down the middle and pull the trash down the middle. Those of you who don't raid very often, just remember that if you are pulling trash packs or mob packs, whatever you want to call them, to try and kill that healer first. Interrupt them, CC them. If you got multiple healers, CC them. Whatever. Just focus down that healer first, and then you can concentrate healer or healers, and then you can concentrate on the rest of the mob pack before you move on to the next one. For those of you that are new, if you're in what seems like maybe a newer group, I would suggest, CCing a mob or 2 just to keep the damage low so you guys can survive. So anyways, you get in there, go right down the middle. I believe there's 3 or 4 trash packs. You'll be fine, and then you will walk up like 2 or 3 stairs, and you will get into the boss room or the boss arena, however you want to call it. The first boss you will run into is called the Abyssal Commander Severa. It's like a little spidery-looking lady that you got to fight. And, make sure everybody's buffed up. You're good to go. And, those of you, if the group hasn't jumped into a Discord, I highly suggest using the Blizzard in-game voice. It runs on the same voice engine that Overwatch uses, so it's very reliable. It's very good. Use that. Get everybody in there. It will help your raid group massively with some of these other bosses that you'll be facing. So, have your tanks start the fight, and as soon as you start the fight, you will start DPSing the boss. A few seconds after the fight starts, each player will be given a poison or a frost debuff. These debuffs require you to do certain mechanics throughout the fight. So what most people do is they split the room in half. If you have the poison debuff, which is green, you will move to the left side of the room. And if you have the frost debuff, which is blue, you will move to the right side of the room. So these buffs, if you have the poison buffs, it requires you to stand still. You cannot move you can move around, but you don't want to move around a lot because you're going to gain stacks of the debuff, and that's bad. Having 1 is okay, or 2 or 3 is okay, but when you start getting in the 4 or 5 stacks, that's when it's a problem. So, if you have the poison debuff, you need to, get to a good spot and stand still. You do not want to move around the room if you have the poison debuff. Obviously, there might be some instances where you have to move. That's okay. But for the most part, you don't want to be tapping your movement keys around so your player is moving. You want to stand as still as possible, okay? If you have the frost debuff and you move to the right side of the room, or the blue debuff, however you want to look at it, your goal is to keep moving while you're doing your tasks. So just basically click your keys back and forth to just kind of move back and forth in space a little bit, or forward and backwards, left and right. You just want to keep moving, because if you stop moving, you're going to gain more stacks of the frost debuff. Tanks are always going to be getting stacks of the whatever the tank stacks get. I forget what they're called, but at some point they're going to want to swap when they get the appropriate amount of stacks. That's something the tanks will have to figure out between themselves. During the fight, if you gain too many stacks, we're talking 4 or 5 stacks of your debuff, right? The poison or the frost debuff. You are able to drop those stacks off and restart. How you do this is you have to either run to the other side of the room, which will clear your stack. So basically just run to the other half of the room and run back to your appropriate side. Or my screen went blank here. Later on in the fight, as you're doing this, some players will become overloaded. What overloaded means is they'll get a little swirly boy that swirls on the ground underneath their player. That player must move out the swirly to a location on the outside of the room so as to not get in the way, and have somebody stack up with them, 1 or 2 people, to help absorb some of the damage that you're going to take with this swirly boy when it finally wears off. That swirly boy will then drop a patch of goo or bad stuff on the ground. So, if for whatever reason you get too many stacks of your debuff, that frost or that poison, and you can't go to the other, and you make it to the other side of the room, you can actually step in that bad stuff, the opposite bad stuff, mind you. You can step into the opposite bad stuff to clear your stacks. Also, throughout this fight, the boss will have a phase where some shooting frost or some shooting poison will come out of the boss. Now, this is a good way to clear your stacks too. If you have too many stacks of the poison or the frost, you can get hit by one of the opposite spears, and that will clear your stacks. Just one thing here about the stacks that you can take, okay? It's very important to not get stacks at all. You can't avoid getting more than one. You will always get one, okay? But if you get more than one, obviously you take damage, or you take movement speed debuffs, okay? If you clear those stacks, you will cause raid-wide damage. So if you're going to clear stacks, it's got to be coordinated. You got to let your healers know, hey, so-and-so is going to go clear stacks. I've got too many stacks. Just so they can be ready if they need to use cooldowns or anything, okay? So far in this fight, just to kind of give you a quick rundown, because I've been talking a little bit about it, you're going to start the fight. You're going to get a debuff, move to the appropriate side of the room. You either stand still or you keep continuously move. Some players will be affected with little swirly boys. Run those out and have somebody stack with you. If for whatever reason your debuff gets too many stacks and you need to clear it, advise your healers that you're going to clear your stack and just run to the opposite, to the other player's area in the room, okay? You'll clear your stack, you'll run back. If you can't clear it that way, you can get hit by one of the spears at that phase, an opposite spear, and that'll clear your stack, okay? Again, you're going to cause raid-wide damage if you're clearing stacks. So just be aware of that. Continuing on, there's also a part in the fight where you will be targeted with a spear by the boss. The boss is going to shoot a spear at you. Basically, you just want to when you get targeted with this, just run over to the entrance area. The boss will throw the spear, and you'll see a little arrow on the ground pointing at which direction the spear is going to go. So just make sure you have that pointed towards the entrance area. If everybody is standing in the correct positions with their debuffs, you'll see where to put that. Doesn't have to go to the start, where you walk into the room. It can be anywhere in there, just as long as the spear is not going to travel through any other players, and you'll be golden. And the last little bit that really makes this fight a little kicker is that at certain points in the fight, you might be selected to have your debuff switched on you. So if you get chosen to have your debuff switched, you have to move to the other side of the room. When you are doing this, you do not want to run into any other players that have the opposite debuff. This will cause you to once again switch, and then it just causes a mess. So if you start with the poison debuff and you're on the left-hand side and you get switched, you want to run clockwise, which would be up and around the back side of the boss, towards the towards the north end of the room to go to the other side. And if you're frost and you're switched to poison, you want to run clockwise down along the south side of the room over to the poison side. And you want to do that as quick as possible. And if you're poison, once you get into your spot, stop, stay still. And if you're frost, when you get over, start moving. Rinse and repeat, and you're golden. You'll beat it. So, recap on Abyssal Commander Sivera. You will get a poison or frost debuff. Move to the appropriate side of the room and stand still or keep moving depending on which debuff you have. The tank will swap with appropriate stacks, which the tanks will have to figure out before the fight starts. If your debuff changes, you need to switch sides. You will always be moving clockwise. That way you won't run into anybody else that you're not supposed to touch. If you are targeted with the spear, run the spear out away from other players. If you are affected with the overloaded stack, meaning take your swirly boy out of the group, out of the way, have somebody come with you and stack on top of you. When the debuff wears off, you'll spread the damage out between yourself and the other person, and you will be okay. That debuff will then drop a pile of bad goo on the ground that you may later use if you need to drop stacks. Basically, that's the entire fight. If you do that dance correctly, this fight will not be a problem. It's actually a pretty easy fight. This sounds like a lot, but it's pretty easy. So, moving on. You will start going to the next area of the raid, obviously. This next portion, you will have to go underwater, which is one of the main mechanics of this next boss fight, actually. So, you will go underwater, and there is a little globule to your left-hand side. You need to pick up that globule, and that'll end up giving you the ability to breathe underwater. Yippee, problem solved, right? Not really. You will be able to now breathe underwater. However, you are not able to be healed. Obviously, not being able to be healed is a pretty big problem. So, what do you do then? There is little puffer fishes that you have to kill along the way. When you kill those puffer fishes, they will emit a green goo. You need to swim through that green goo, and that will give you the ability to now be healed. It'll be a buff that will let you be healed by your healers. The buff lasts about 45 seconds. So as you're making your way through the tunnel to the next boss, you will kill a puffer fish, get your healing, make your way through, kill the trash. Hopefully you kill the trash fast enough. Then you can get to your next puffer fish, kill your puffer fish, get your buff. You get 45 seconds to make it through the next set of trash. Get to the puffer fish, so on and so forth until you get to the boss. When you get to the boss, like I said, it's an underwater fight. The boss fight is actually going to be on 3 separate platforms. So starting on platform 1, you'll get your raid buffs and everything up that you normally would for your fight, and you will pull the boss. The raid group will then Sorry about that. The raid group will then kill the first pufferfish. Right there, you'll see it when you walk over, okay? Kill that pufferfish, get your buff, and go ham on the boss. Just go freaking ham. Just DPS, DPS, DPS. Healers, you'll want to make sure that you're healing the group pretty good. Just keep, make sure, I wouldn't blow cooldowns or whatever, but just keep everybody healed up, okay? And then after 45 seconds, that healing buff is going to drop off, okay? So make sure everybody's topped off right there. And the DPS, probably about 5 seconds before it runs off, before your debuff runs out, you're going to have to pick up that second pufferfish. And you're going to have to DPS that pufferfish down until you kill it, get your buff, and go back on the boss. You will then have another 45 seconds to just go ham on the boss, okay? The boss will phase when he reaches 100 energy. So just go ham, keep going, get as much DPS in as you can. He will reach 100 energy, and he will back off back into his cave. One last thing to mention here is during the entire fight, apologies for this, during the entire fight, try to stay spread about 5 yards apart, okay? So just type slash range in your bar, slash range, space, 5, hit enter, bingo bango, you'll be fine. You'll get a little warning if you're closer in than 5 yards to anybody else, okay? So, to recap, kill pufferfish, get buff. DPS boss, stay spread. When your healing buff runs out, kill second pufferfish, get the buff, go back to DPSing boss. When he reaches 100 energy, he will go back into his cave and phase. This is where you switch platforms, okay? Now, when you go to move platforms, you will see some rushing water on the edge of the platform. Make sure you run through that. If you still have that green healing buff from the pufferfish and you start to move to the next platform, when you're over the open water or the open area, a big fish will come up and try to eat you, and it will succeed. So you need to make sure that if you still have that buff, you swim through the rushing water at the bottom of the platform to clear your buff off. However, swimming to the next platform, you must dodge a bunch of jellyfish that are swimming. These jellyfish not only will damage you if you hit them, they will give you the green healing buff that will attract the big monster from below to come and eat you. So do not run into the jellyfishes on the way to the next platform. When you get to the next platform, you're going to see it's a combination of like three little platforms that encompass this next area, okay? You're going to get over there. You're going to kill once everybody gets over, your tanks are going to pick up the boss. You're going to kill that pufferfish, get your healing debuff, and you're going to start DPSing. The tanks will come back and get their buff, and you'll be fighting. Yeah, and that's just it. You'll start attacking the boss, stay spread. Your debuff is going to run out, and you have to kill the next pufferfish. And then once you kill another puff, about 5 seconds before your buff runs out, get to kill that pufferfish, go back and start DPSing the boss again. I did forget to mention, however, throughout this fight, the boss really only has one mechanic. It's a knockback mechanic, so it's going to knock you back. Just make sure you're going to be knocked back on the ledge if you are close to the boss. One way to avoid taking damage by this knockback attack is you'll get a little raid-wide warning when this is going to happen. The farther away from the boss you are, the less damage you take, and you won't be knocked back. So, I should have mentioned this on the starting platform. Shame on me. But that's part of it. So this boss fight is basically the same thing. There's 3 platforms, so it's the same thing on all 3 platforms. So starting off, You kill the pufferfish, get your buff, DPS the boss. If the boss does his knockback maneuver, swim away from the boss to take less damage and so you don't get knocked back. Once his attack is over, you go back to DPSing. When your healing buff is 5 seconds from running out, kill the next pufferfish, pick up your healing buff, go back to killing the boss. Right before the boss will, right before you go to kill that second pufferfish, make sure you get topped off, okay? Just to make sure your healers top you off, just in case you have a delay in killing that pufferfish, all right? So you kill the second pufferfish, DPS the boss. He reaches 100 energy. He goes back into the cave and moves to the next platform. You then swim down, swim through the rushing water, and swim across the open sea or the open area that doesn't have any ground underneath it. Remember, don't hit the jellyfish. You will take damage, and a big fish will come and eat you. When you finally make your way to the next platform, kill the pufferfish, get your buff, DPS the boss. The boss will knock you back. In between you and the other platforms, there'll be an open area the big fish will try to eat you, so just be aware of that. It's easier to see when you start the fight. If he goes for his knockback maneuver, swim away. You'll take less damage. You won't get knocked back. Once that's done, get back on the boss. DPS, DPS, DPS. 5 seconds before your healing buff runs out, run to the second pufferfish. Kill it. Get your buff. Swim back to the boss. DPS, DPS, DPS. By this time, if you have enough DPS, he will reach 100 energy. He will go back into the cave, and you will now have to make your way to the third platform. Again, swim into the rushing water to clear everything. As you're swimming to the next platform, do not touch the jellyfish because you will end up taking damage and getting eaten by the bigger fish. When you get to that third platform, DPS the pufferfish, kill it, get your pufferfish buff, and DPS the boss. Same mechanics, DPS, DPS, DPS. Get back from the knockback. 5 seconds before your healing buff runs out. Pick up kill the next pufferfish. Get your buff and go back to DPSing the boss. The only thing I would like to say that's different on that third platform is if your DPS isn't high enough, you may be in a situation where the boss isn't dead and you've exhausted all of your pufferfishes. So it's really important that the healers, that if you're in the situation and you're not going to have enough DPS to beat the boss before your healing buff runs out, make sure your healers top everybody off right before your buff runs out. And then DPS, 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 and then make sure everybody uses personal healing cooldowns at that point. Personals are able to be used, you just cannot be healed by the healers. So at that point, the boss is dead. You pick up your gear and you move to the next boss. The next boss is called the Radiance of Ashara. This boss room is a circular boss room with water around the outside of, I'd say, probably 75% of it. So, obviously everybody gets their buffs, and the tanks start the fight. All melee players are going to need to stack together, and they're going to be moving in unison. Because the boss is going to spawn little swirly tornadoes. These tornadoes spawn and they either move up and down or side to side. They kind of just move all over. They're a real big pain in the ass. But if all the melees stay stacked, you can move as a group and everything will be fine. These tornadoes are spawned on players, so you kind of be able to predict where these tornadoes are going to be spawning. You're gonna dodge these by moving counterclockwise as a group. It's hard to imagine it, but once you start the fight, you'll see. So melee stay stacked, range stay on the outside. everybody stay kind of grouped up and move in unison. During the first phase, the boss will also target a random player with a real big swirly boy that you have to run out of the group, okay? The key thing with this swirly boy is it doesn't just drop off. The healers have to debuff you or dispel you, whatever you want to call it. I think the game calls it cleansing you. So basically, you have to move to a safe spot. Once you get in that safe spot, the healer will have to cleanse you. So you drop the swirly boy where you're standing. Just basically make sure you're in a good spot. As you are DPSing the boss down, eventually an ad will spawn. The ad will usually spawn on the far side of the room where the most of the water is at. So you're going to have to run over there to get to the ad. However, while you're running over there, there's going to be tornadoes and swirly boys, and there's going to be bubbles blocking the way to the ad, whichever direction. Since this is a circular room, the boss is in the middle. Whether you decide to go clockwise or counterclockwise to get to the ad, you're going to have to run through these bubbles. But you can't run through them, so the group needs to focus down one bubble. So everybody focus on one bubble, not all of them, just one of them. Create that opening and go through to the ad, okay? Once you get to the ad, just have the tanks pick them up, start DPSing. That ad is going to drop little mini ads. Make sure that when they are spawned, you AoE those things down super, super fast because you don't want them getting in the way. Get back to the main ad. This main ad has a pretty significant mechanic where he will knock you back. And if you get knocked back into the water, you will take some nasty damage from that water. So you don't want it. Everybody gets knocked back. There's no way to avoid it. You just want to put yourself into a position where you are not knocked back into the water. So make sure you are facing to be knocked back onto the circular platform. Once you clear that ad, the main boss in the middle of the room will come back up, and you just start the tornado swirly boy phase again, and you just DPS them down, follow those mechanics, and eventually you'll beat the boss. I do believe there is 2 or 3 ad phases, so be ready for that. But this fight is actually pretty easy for a third boss fight. So just a quick rundown again. Start DPSing the boss. Melee players stack. Ranged players kind of stay spread in the back. The boss is going to spawn tornadoes. Dodge those by moving clockwise or counterclockwise, however you want to do it. If you are targeted with a big swirly boy, get to a clean area and a healer will dispel you and drop the swirly on the ground. So make sure you're in a good spot. An ad will spawn. On the way to running to the ad, you are going to be blocked by bubbles. Everybody attack one singular bubble. Everybody needs to be on the same one, so it gets down fast. You kill it, you run through, you get to the ad. Start DPSing the ad. He will start giving you mini ads. DPS those down quick, AoE. Make sure you're in a position so when you are knocked back, you are not knock-backed into the water. Landing in the water is bad. You want to land on ground, not water. Kill the ad. Rinse and repeat with the boss in the ads, and you will clear LFR Wing 1. That's pretty much it. You will then get the achievement, the Grand Reception, and you will be an LFR hero. Congratulations. To those of you that don't normal raid, LFR can be a pretty daunting task, especially when nobody wants to follow mechanics. So I suggest that you just try to get everybody into that voice chat group. Everybody stay civil, play nice with each other, and you will have no problem getting this down to LFR. I know me sitting here talking and you listening without visuals is pretty, it can make it seem real confusing. So I would go ahead and check out the YouTube channels Fat Boss TV or Hazelnutty Games. They both usually put out some really, really, really good boss fight encounter guides for every raid tier. You can see them on YouTube, so I suggest you check those guys out. Like I said, they put out some really good videos. I have no affiliations with them. I don't know them at all. I just know about their videos, and they're great. So, for those of you that like a good challenge, you do also have the chance to go for the Glory of the Eternal Raider achievement. Basically, for those of you that don't know what that is there little certain things that makes the boss fights harder and more challenging. Like usually, so I know for the second boss, where you're changing the platforms, you can swim down into the abyss and pick up little sea creatures. And I think that one is if you pick up 50 sea creatures during the fight and then kill the boss. That's an individual achievement that counts towards the Glory of the Eternal Raider achievement. So each boss fight usually has its own little dealie. It just kind of makes the fight a little bit more challenging than it normally would be. And at the end, you get like I said, the Glory of the Eternal Raider achievement. And I don't know if this, usually it comes with a mount. If you get the Glory achievement, you get a mount. I don't know if there is a mount this time around. And for you big time heroic raiders, obviously you have the Ahead of the Curve achievement. I think that one might actually drop a mount as well. I'm not sure. Sometimes it does, sometimes it don't. Basically, Ahead of the Curve is you just beat the entire raid on heroic difficulty. And it's actually a pretty big deal to get that Ahead of the Curve achievement. So, you LFR guys, if that's something you guys want to try, you better make sure you get your LFR cleared and, run your Mythic Pluses every week. So you can make sure to get your, run your keys and everything. You got to get the eye level higher to be able to get into those heroics. Get a good guild. Because those heroics are tough. That's something that's going to be really, really hard to just pug. So, yeah, I don't want to be a dead horse. Don't want to beat a dead horse. And speaking of horses, I just want to talk about a couple of mounts that you can get. The first mount I want to talk about is called Fabius, spelled Fabious. To get this mount, you need to go to the Bloodfin Village at coordinates 2529 in Nazjatar. If you get to that area and there is a seahorse running around, what you want to do is get your selfie camera out and take a selfie with this seahorse swimming around in the background. The mount is only going to be there for 2 minutes, so you got to be fast. So he'll be up for 2 minutes. Get your camera out, take a picture, and you will then get the Fabius Seahorse mount, which is pretty cool. I am going to be working on that this week as well. So hopefully, next podcast I have some good news regarding the Fabius Seahorse mount. And the next mount I wanted to talk to you guys about was the Seahorse mount Tide Stallion. You will get this mount by finding Merle, M-R-R-L, in Nazjatar. Once you find him, he's going to have a quest for you. You need to escort him back to Mezimir, which is the starting area in Nazjatar. That will complete the quest A Safer Place. Once you do that, new friends will appear that sell certain items. Some items won't appear unless you have specific items in your bags. You must have the Ashari Storm Surger cape for this to work out for you. So basically, you're going to have these NPCs that show up that sell you stuff. And one of the items you can buy is that seahorse mount. The problem is you have to have a certain amount of these other items. So there's 3 other items that are currency, and you have to have this certain amount of them to buy the seahorse mount. But in order to get the currency, you have to purchase the currency with other stuff that you can buy from these. So basically, it's like a trading game. So you buy 3 of this to trade it for 4 of that, to trade it for 6 of that, to trade it for 12 of that. And basically, by the end, you have the correct currency to buy this Tide Stallion Seahorse mount. It's not too hard to do. If you look it up on Wowhead, and you can get the directions step by step on how to do it and how much it's going to cost you, so on and so forth. Yeah. And that is it for WoW news. We're about an hour so far, so we're doing good on time. We're doing pretty good on time. A little bit of off-topic Blizzard news here. This last week, StarCraft came out with a little game enhancement, so to speak. It's called StarCraft Cartooned. Basically, the entire game got a reskin to look like a cartoon. I think it's really cool. I've actually thought about buying it, maybe trying out StarCraft, because I just really liked the way it looked, and I thought it was unique, something different. Like Blizzard just bloop, here you go. Like, had no idea this was coming. And like I said, I just think it's really neat, and we'll call it 80% sure I'm going to buy this thing and give it a try. So, moving on to the last bit of news I have here, guys. For me, this is a big deal. This is something that I was hoping Blizzard would have done a long, long time ago. And it's in regards to Overwatch. Blizzard announced this week that Overwatch is adding a role queue to their matchmaking, and it is actually up on the public test realm right now for everybody to try. Basically, prior to explain this, prior to queuing for a match, players will select a role, either a tank player, a tank role, damage role, or a support role. The matchmaking system will then match 2 tanks, 2 supports, and 2 damage dealers to make a team. During the match, players will only be able to select characters from their chosen role. So when you're paired up, let's say I want to play a tank. So I choose tank. I queue up for a match. Once there's 2 tanks, 2 damage dealers, and 2 support roles, all in a group, we will then start our character selection. I will only be able to pick from the tanks, so to speak, if that's what I chose. And throughout the entire match, if I feel like I need to change characters, I will only be able to choose from the tank role. My thoughts on this? I think this needed to happen a long time ago. I do feel like this is going to end up causing a delay in finding matches for some people, because I'm sure a lot of people will just rather play damage. Nothing wrong with that. If that's how you want to play, that's fine. But when there's not many people playing tank or support, it's going to be hard for damage dealers to find a match, because there's going to be so many of them playing. So, I think this is a good change. To go into a little bit more detail about it, once your game is over, you will re-choose your role and queue for the next game. So it's not like you can just re-queue without having to reselect the role. You have to pick your role after every match, which is fine. Each of the 3 roles will have its own queue, and your MMR will be per role. So let's say you're a really good damage dealer and your MMR is really high. And you're like, you know what? I don't really want to play damage anymore. I want to play support. If you re-choose your role as support, your MMR is going to be based on that. So basically, you will be put back down to the bottom then if you're not a very good healer. And I think this is also good too, because a lot of times the way Overwatch worked out is like you would shoot, like let's say everybody would pick what they picked, and let's say you were a really good tank, you were awesome at tank, you were really good at it, you had a really high MMR, but then you get grouped with a bunch of people who won't let you be tank, and now you're stuck playing support because they won't let you play damage or tank. Well, you could be a terrible support player, and now your MMR doesn't get to grow because you're always stuck playing support because you're that nice guy that tries to make everybody happy. So, if that makes sense, it probably doesn't make any sense. It's late. I'm rambling. So yeah, but basically everything's per your chosen role. So in competitive mode, players will earn skill ratings for each role between 1 through 5,000. You'll have bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond master, or grandmaster. Once role queue is in the game, players will be required to complete 5 placement matches in a selected role to obtain their seasonal skill rating for that role at the start of each competitive season. So, you basically, if a player would like to earn their seasonal SR for all 3 roles, they will need to complete 15 placement matches in total, 5 total per role. I think this is good because if you main a tank, if you're a tank main, that's less games you got to play, for your placement matches to get into the season. I think this change in Overwatch is better as a whole all the way around. I really, really, really do feel that way. There will be a role queue beta season. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm assuming they're going to have like a little mini season to test everything out in the live game, not the PTR, just to make sure everything works out okay. And to prove that Blizzard feels this is the right direction to go, the Overwatch League will be moving to a 2-2-2 role lock with the start of Stage 5, which begins on July 25th. Today's the 21st, so that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, July 25th. The Overwatch League is going to be adopting this format of play as well. So this is huge news for Overwatch. There's so much, Overwatch has gone down in its ratings, so to speak, at least on Twitch, because of this problem. Because nobody wanted to work together as a team, and everybody just wanted to be out for themselves, choose whatever they wanted to play. Nobody wanted to do what was best for the team in regards to certain roles. So this is huge. Overwatch needed to do this a long time ago. I am so glad they finally decided to move in this direction. So with that, everybody, I wanted to say thanks for sticking around for this solo episode of Ganking Azeroth. It was actually a lot harder to sit here and do this by myself. I'm at 1 hour and 5 minutes about on my counter here. Hour and 22 seconds. And it was a lot harder to sit here and talk than I thought it would be. This episode would have been way, way longer, I think, if Sean was here to do it. But like I said, with all the computer problems we had in the last week and the internet problems we had the week before, just, real life stuff took its toll on the podcast this week. So please accept mine and Sean's apologies. We are definitely going to try to do better in the future. Definitely going to try and do better. So with that, I would like to again say thank you for sticking around. Much appreciated. You can go ahead and follow me on all my social media spots. I can be found at twitch.tv/WayneDapayne. It's spelled WayneDapayne. Again, twitch.tv/WayneDapayne. You can be found on Twitter at WayneDapayne1, on Instagram at WayneDapayne1, and also on YouTube. My channel is Wayne Dapayne. However, I do not have a custom URL yet, so you're just going to have to search that in YouTube. I'll pop up there somewhere. Go check me out there. I would really like your support in all those places. It would mean a lot to me. You can follow Rurik or Sean at twitch.tv/RurikGaming, RurrukGaming. And you can find them everywhere else on that too. Twitter and Instagram, I believe, as well as Rurik Gaming. He also has a YouTube. I don't think he's got much on there, but go ahead, drop him a sub over there, click the bell. He's going to try to get some videos up there very shortly. He's doing the best he can. So for me and for Sean, who is not present this week, but we're going to try to have him back next week, we would like to say thank you, and we'll see you in game. Peace.